Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel Anglo Election Insights. We are continuing a video series previewing the upcoming Australian federal election, today with a focus on Western Australia, which was of course the key to Labor's 2022 majority, flipping several seats and finally winning the two-party preferred statewide vote for the first time since 1990. It was due to a combination of factors. Not only was the incumbent Liberal government federally on the nose, but they'd gotten on the wrong side of a High Court challenge that Clive Palmer launched against the McGowan state government, which certainly rubbed people the wrong way in Western Australia. And speaking of the McGowan state government, they were extremely popular at the time, and there's certainly some evidence that they provided something of a strong halo effect on the federal Labor Party. But as we'll see, Western Australia has been naturally a conservative state. As I said, ever since the Hawke-Keating era, the Liberals have consistently won the statewide two-party preferred, and as such they've won the seat count in WA as well, but that's all flipped come 2022 after a 10% swing to the Labor Party. Looking at the map here, not a huge amount of sort of really strong trends here, but I think one thing we can see is the ALP's vote strengthening from Fremantle down to the south. And then certainly by the time we get to 2022, this area around the mouth of the Swan River very much Labor controlled after, at one point here in 2016, the Liberals really were quite strong in that area. And then, of course, starting to spread north to the LP's influence, which, these areas have typically been quite sort of blue ribbon in the past. So we'll have a look at some key seats. Now, the first one here is Curtin. This was won by Kate Chaney. She was the Teal Independent. It's actually the most marginal Teal seat in the country. I would say of all of them, this one has a rather good chance of flipping back. It's not going to take much of a statewide swing to bring this 1.3% margin into play. We do have to keep in mind that with an independent running, the impact of a sophomore swing could be much more pronounced than it would otherwise be. But again, that Liberal primary starting from sort of 41.3, only a few more points, sort of getting into 44, 45, a slight snap back. That's really going to endanger the chances of Kate Chaney, especially if some of that Liberal vote is coming from Labor and Green vote that might be feeding her preferences. And the other thing to consider here is the MRP poll that we'll look at later is saying this will flip, but they can be a little bit dicey when it comes to non-traditional contests. Next up we have Bullwinkle. So this is a new seat. This was created just in time for this election, after a couple of seats were lost in New South Wales and Victoria. It's created as a peri-urban seat with a large rural area, but most of the electors actually living sort of on the eastern edge of the Perth metropolitan area. I guess a good example of a similar seat in Victoria, for example, would be something like Casey. It's notionally held by Labor on a 3.3% margin, just on the blowout 2022 result, and it's likely to be contested by both a Liberal and a Nationals candidate, which might be interesting to see who actually makes the two-party preferred count, especially given only 15% of the voters live in the rural part of the electorate. But having said that, the impact of federal Labor's live export ban policy is one that's of particular note to rural areas in WA. So a few moving parts here, but without an incumbent to defend, I think it's going to be tough for Labor to hold on to this one, and it could become quite a safe Liberal seat in future election cycles. So Tangney is the other one where it's a rather small margin that Labor are holding this seat on, only 2.8%, which has come in just slightly after the redistribution. It was previously a very reliable LNP seat, but in a 12% swing, Labor actually picked it up last election. And basically, a seat like this is a must-win for the coalition. If they're going to have any chance of forming government either outright or in minority, they're going to need a seat like this. Moving on, a couple of other seats that Labor picked up last election. One of them is Pearce. This was Christian Porter's old seat, and as we can see, a really strong swing against the Liberal Party here, which isn't uncommon when you have candidates, or MPs rather, sort of wrapped up in really big scandals. It can leave a really bad taste in the minds of, or in the mouths of voters. And despite him not being on the ticket, you can see that, minus 13.5 on primaries there to the Liberal candidate. This is one where if the swing is on, it could get interesting, and it could be an indication that that Perth and WA in general are experiencing a snapback towards the Liberal Party, but on a margin of 8.8%, it's going to be a hill to climb, that's for sure. And the other one that sort of falls into that similar category is Haslock. It's lost quite a lot of its rural area to the new seat of Bullwinkle, so its margin has blown out to 10.1%. It's very much become a sort of metropolitan suburban seat. Essentially, the Liberal Party will be looking for a big recovery in their primary vote to try and get that margin into at least the low single digits, put it on the map for 2028, or if the swing is really on, they could be competitive on the night. So to look at some general polling here, we have the Guardian's aggregate model, which is showing only a 1% swing statewide to the LNP from 2022, which really wouldn't be enough to win anything back if the swing was uniform. Newspoll reported a 3% swing to the LNP, so that's a 48 to 52 two-party preferred. That was in their sort of October spring update on their quarterly numbers, but then on the figures just released on Boxing Day, it's back out to 46.54. So at this stage, not a lot of movement on Newspoll statewide. This new polling outfit reported 48.52 as well. And if we assume that a 3-point swing or a 3% swing is on the cards, then the coalition are looking at 3 or 4 seats potentially to flip, which is absolute minimum for them to be thinking about forming government. Here are the more detailed numbers of those MRP numbers from Redbridge and Accent Group. So we can see with Curtin, and again, we've really got to be careful with the non-traditional contests. They don't sort of translate well in this type of polling, but the average margin here is 1.5%. The Liberals gaining this one off Kate Cheney. Bullwinkle, same margin, but this time the Liberals picking it up notionally from the ALP. Tangney's the interesting one because according to MRP polling, this one is quite sticky. That small 2.8% lead is enough, and Labor aren't really losing much ground here at all. So very interesting one to watch on the night. And then in Haslock, comfortable retain there, 6%. PS is interesting, those numbers, this is an average that I've taken of the 3 readings, but the Liberals are slowly catching up, and you can see here they've almost caught up on primary vote, and this was reported as a 5-point two-party preferred margin. So Pearce trending in the right direction, but we're probably going to need to see some much better statewide polling for that one to be competitive for the Liberals. As for my own predictions, I do think that Perth, specifically Perth, metropolitan Perth, has the potential to buck the national trend. Although there was a national swing to Labor in 2022, it was insane in Perth. It was much more than anything seen anywhere else. And if the Labor brand truly is still really strong there, there's no reason why that might not hold up. But at the same time, the snapback effect might occur as well. 10 points to Labor, and it comes back 4 or 5% to the Liberals, and that's enough really to flip 4 seats straight off the bat. The other issue here is that the state election is slated for early March, and a lot of polling so far is showing that the state Labor government is slightly more popular than the federal Labor government in WA. So it could be that WA's love affair with Labor is what plays out in the state election, but perhaps they don't come back to federal Labor in quite the same numbers. So that's something to consider. But as for the 5 seats that we've mentioned, I think the LNP will win Curtin back. It will be very tight, but I think they'll do it. Bullwinkle, I think the Liberal Party will have no problems gaining that seat, and specifically I think it'll be a Liberal win, not a Nationals win. Tangney, I think the statewide swing will be enough that the Liberal Party will take that one back as well. Finally, Pearce, I think the ALP will narrowly retain Pearce by 2 or 3%. I think the trends will continue as we've seen this year, where the LNP will continue to catch up to Labor in that seat, but it won't quite be enough. Whereas in Haslock, I think it'll be a much more comfortable retain for the ALP. So there we have it. Thanks again for watching the video. Please like, comment your thoughts, subscribe to the channel, and share the video with your friends and family. We'll be continuing this series. We'll have a look at the NT next, and then we'll be into the Eastern Seaboard, where a lot of the swings and a lot of the big contests will be happening. So stay tuned. Bye.